Have you ever wondered if Geralt could survive without his swords? Today I'm going to tell you a little story of how I did it, so buckle up. Let's begin with how it all started. One day as I was traveling down through the village of Yanta at midnight, I ran into this guy. You might know him by the name of Master Mirror, Man of Glass, or Gaunter O'Dimm. I'm just gonna call him the Devil. So I ran into him at these crossroads, not the first time, and he proposed we made a pact. It was more of a bet than anything, but what he said, and I quote, "You are deemed as such a high esteemed individual, a monster slayer, but can the monster slayer slay if he doesn't have his swords?" I was like, "Hold it, Roach." And addressing the devil, I said, "You doubt I can survive without my swords?" To which he replied, "I don't doubt. You are a mutant after all, but I just want to make this world a more interesting place. So, wanna bet?" To which I said, "Oh hell, why not? What do you propose?" After a short pause and a brief look at the sky, he looked back at me grinning. "My offer is simple. If you can cross Velen from bottom to top without ever using your swords or any weapon other than your fist, you cannot use your signs either unless it's Quen for protection if necessary, and of course you have to do it on foot. If you can do so, I will grant you any wish you want. You might call it the last wish." Then he laughed uncontrollably. I said. I thought it sounded way too easy and I wanted to do something anyways, so monster hunting could wait, and I told him, "Deal." Then he somehow teleported us to this place at the very bottom of the map and simply said, smiling, "Good luck, Witcher, see you in Novigrad," and then he disappeared. So I had to ditch my swords and bid Roach farewell. I gave her a good pat on the back and said, "See you soon, girl." It was time to go. Now Velen is huge and the deal was to cross it from the bottom of the land all the way to Novigrad. Luckily for me, there are plenty of taverns to stop by if I got hungry or thirsty, so it seemed like a walk in the park. Oh, how I was wrong though. As I came up the stairs, I came to this desolate village and my very first dangerous encounter with some foglids. Apparently without my swords, they got scared of me, but I guess then they smelled that I had no silver on me.
How you like that silver?
And decided to take me on. After boxing them for some time and getting slapped from behind, I realized I was a bit underpowered and I didn't want to go down so fast on my journey, so I decided to make a run for my life. And right around the corner there was a village with some villagers having a party. I tried to talk to this lady, asking her what they were doing there, to which she replied,
"Who are you?"
And then suddenly I saw that foglid materializing out of nowhere, but it seemed like the villagers didn't see it. They didn't react to it at all, and the foglid didn't attack them, only targeting me. That's when I thought that maybe that foglid was in my head. Then I remembered I drank some herbal tea before embarking on this quest, and I wondered what was in it. Or maybe it was O'Dimm himself messing around with my head. So I brushed the foglids off as little hallucinations and decided to continue. As I went a little bit up, I came across this doggo that was doing some weird business. Now at that point I was sure that something was wrong with that tea I drunk. So after giving the doggo a little pat on the back, I thought it was time to go. What a weird place, I thought. I went down the hill and across the shore. Had to get a bit wet. Then I ran into a band of bandits guarding a chest, so I decided to put my boxing skills to the test. It was a bit of a warm-up, you could say. I kicked their butts relatively easily. They just fell like flies to the power of my fist. But one of them had a shield and it was always a problem even when I had my sword to back me up. So yeah, that's when I realized I hated shields even more than portals. After a little dancing and maneuvering, I finally managed to break his back with my fist. I checked the treasure they were guarding and it was a pretty good find, especially the alcohol. I thought I was going to definitely need it on this journey. At that point I figured it would be a good idea to take a little break, so I rested a bit by the warmth of the campfire. It felt nice, but I had to continue my journey. It was still a long way to Novigrad, yet I was feeling up to it. The fight simply energized me. As I went into the forest I found a little pond with a dead horse by it. A sad sight. Suddenly I thought of Roach and got a bit worried about her being all by herself, but I couldn't get distracted by those thoughts. I had my mission to do. I went further into a swamp and found a monster nest with some drowners in the distance. I set my eyes on the boat, but as I approached it, the stench of drowners' flesh Worse than 100 skunks combined simply repelled me. I almost died there and then. I didn't want to soak my cloak in that stench, so I thought, forget the boat, I'm just gonna walk around. As I went around, I came across my good old pal Leslav. I helped him once before. He'd been building that place for a while now. Guess he liked building. After a little chat, he treated me to a bottle of alkahest and a bottle of dwarven spirit. I was going to need them to refill my potions later. It was such a nice gesture of him. I said thank you and carried on with my journey. I went up a hill and got a good idea of my next steps. Luckily for me, there was a little trail leading down the hill and right to where I needed to go. So all I had to do was follow it and surely I would reach my next destination in no time. The atmosphere was quite tranquil with nothing to get in my way. I was enjoying the smell of tree branches as I went down into the thick forest. It smelled like spring. Then I came to a crossroad and someone shouted,
"Not one step closer, or you'll have a lie with the other stiffs."
Looters, I figured. There were a few of them, but I thought I could take them on. Besides, it was rude of them to say what they said and I had to know what they were doing, so I took a step forward. After quickly kicking their butts, I understood they were looting someone they'd slain. Poor man, I thought. A horrible way to go. But that's the reality of Velen. I figured he had a house nearby where I could take a rest. I found his little cabin and took some things for the road. Otherwise, looters would have taken them anyways. After that, I went a bit further and came across this beautiful tree. In fact, it must have been the most beautiful tree I'd ever seen. I thought it was a good sign and decided to take a little break under it. After contemplating for an hour, I was ready to proceed. It was getting late and the sky was starting to turn red. Pretty chill too. But after my meditation, I didn't feel that much tired yet, so I thought I could make it to the next village and rest by the warmth of the hearth. I came across some tents in the middle of nowhere. After checking the abandoned campsite, I wondered if it was a bear responsible for its abandonment. And lo and behold, I got greeted by a bear. Luckily, it just woke up from its deep and dreamless slumber and was too sluggish to fight me head on, so I knocked it out quite easily. Then I went up the trail deeper into the woods. So far so good, I thought, but it was getting late, so I needed to make it to a safe house. I checked the map and realized that the castle village was not too far. Surely I could make it by nightfall if I hurried. So I rushed to it but was stopped by the look of this mesmerizing sunset. I couldn't help but take a minute to admire it. As I ran further, I ran into a village. I decided to ask this old man if there was any place I could buy legendary cards for my Quen collection and he replied, So I asked him again. And again. To my realization, the old man was deaf, so I decided not to bother. Then I asked this woman the same question, but she just told me,
Leave me be.
What a friendly bunch, I thought. Oh well, it was time to get something to eat. As I walked out the tavern, I was stopped by this bookie and he asked me if I wanted to make some money by fighting their so-called champion. The guy was not a fighter, I saw it, and he himself actually told me to go easy on him and let him win for the goods they were offering. Now, I am not the type of man to go down easily, so I told him he had to fight me for them. Then I felt a bit bad and decided to go easy on him, but it was no challenge at all. After winning the coin, I felt a bit guilty for some reason, so I decided to give a share to my opponent. He didn't give up after all and he needed the money more than I did anyways. With the guilt off my chest, I went into the tavern. I figured I still had some time before the sunset. I greeted the innkeeper and bought some chicken to snack on. After dinner, I was ready to get to the castle, so after saying my goodbyes,
Roach are gonna rot my gut.
I went out of the village and made a dash for the castle right into the sunset. All I had to do was follow the road and make the right turns. It was super windy at that point and was getting a bit cold. The area around looked desolate and depressing with all the trees burned down. The night was nigh. As I crossed a little stream, there lay a fallen night. War. War never changes, I thought.
Winds howling.
As I made a turn, the castle got inside. Now I just had to find the crossing over the moat. I felt a sense of warmth and despair at the same time. Despair from remembering the Baron and his awful demise. But the warmth came to me when I realized I had my own room to rest in the castle and my good old friends to meet. Hadn't seen them in a while. As I ran forward, suddenly I was stopped by a man dressed in all blue. His name was Ranvit, and out of the blue he challenged me to a duel. I thought it was silly of him, so I called him out on that. He still wanted to fight, so I decided to teach the boy a lesson. Slapped him good, he learned it.
You know, I yield.
I told him to go harass someone else. Finally, I got to the castle's gate. I felt somewhat relieved. I just didn't want to spend the night in the middle of the woods unarmed. As I crossed the breach into the village, I ran into some trouble with one of the Baron's remaining henchmen. He was harassing the villagers, so I decided to help them. Talking didn't work, so fists should. The only downside was that he had a shield, and I hate shields. But Vesemir taught me well how to pirouette, and the technique, to my surprise, applies quite well even without a sword in hand. So I kicked that guy's face with no problem.
Thank you, sir.
Then I ran up to the castle and got to meet my good old friends, Fergus and Yona. Of course, I couldn't resist playing Quen with them. Their deck proved to be way more powerful than my Skellige one though, but despite losing, it was a fun evening time indeed. I was ready for bed. I went up to the castle and went to my cozy bed. I figured I should unload everything since I was not going to use any of the weapons or armor I was carrying, so I put everything in a chest, except for my lucky charm, of course. Then I went to bed and slept till the afternoon. I overslept a bit, yes, but I was just so damn tired, so I had to catch up on sleep before venturing further. The castle area felt nice and friendly. I came up to a horse and petted it. I missed Roach. Checking the map, I thought I could make it to Novigrad by nightfall, so I set out further, but as I was going out of the castle, I was stopped by the smell of smoked fish and dried meat in the street, and my stomach's rumbling. I was famished. I realized I'd forgotten to have breakfast. Luckily, I had some food, so I wolfed down a chicken sandwich and drowned it with some beer. I overdid it a little bit with beer though, felt a bit fuzzy, but I had to go on. Soon enough, I sobered up and went out of the castle. I said goodbye to the guards and went down the road. As I was walking along the castle, I came by this saddening view. What a hospitable community, I thought. A little bit further, I was greeted by some heretics. There was an old man preaching some things and everyone else was bowing to him.
When the great dark descends, brother against brother will brawl.
I thought I needed a rest, so I might as well stick by. So I meditated for an hour. After a little rest, I was ready to proceed. Then I came upon a mushy area. I just dried my clothes up at the castle. I didn't want to get my boots wet again, so I had to jump over logs. One of the most challenging tasks it was. After successfully crossing the mushy land, I went up a hill and came upon another village. It looked quite welcoming. The name was Inn at the Crossroads, so I figured I might as well pay that inn a visit and drink something for the road, so to speak. I said hello to the guard
You're pale as outy shite.
and went in. The village looked nice and calm, but the cats, yeah, the cats don't like me. Still, I deemed them cute, so I went straight into the inn. There were quite a few people inside having fun, some drunk folk of course. I decided to buy some drink. Even though tempting, there was no time to play Gwent, sadly, I thought. That's when I realized I was short of money and couldn't buy anything, so I had to sell some sweets and a croissant I was not going to eat. Then I bought some alcohol. The tables were occupied, like occupied by some weird fellas. This one was practicing some sorcery. I decided not to disturb his levitation and sat at the table with this guy. I drank some beer and listened to nice music. I was a bit drunk at that point, but this bard reminded me of Dandelion. Well played, I thought. Soon I was ready to go on my adventure. I said goodbye to the village and went back into the marshes. The road ahead didn't look pretty at all. A lot of careful stone stepping ahead. After jumping over the swamp, I came back onto the road. As I was going through the forest, suddenly a group of neckers ambushed me. I had to fight my way through. After kicking their nasty butts, I went on. Soon I got to this abandoned hut, a place ransacked by bandits, I figured. Blood everywhere. I made a fire and treated myself to some venison. Now that I had a full stomach, I was ready to proceed. I came upon a war-torn site with some Nilfgaardian troops guarding the area. The only bright side was 2 deer frolicking in the midst of it all. A poetic sight to behold. Dandelion would have loved it. I went ahead and had to cross yet another pond. Luckily, my Witcher skills allow me to jump over long distances. I jumped and went through yet another marshy area. Oof, the smell of swamps, I will never forget it. Then I came upon a river and I didn't want to get wet swimming, so I had to go around. Luckily there was a way to cross it, and as I was crossing it I came across a hidden treasure. I found a corpse in a letter. It read something about muffled farts. I decided not to go into details. Then I had to fight a bunch of neckers. I kicked their butts. There was a pile of human corpses. Savage, I thought. Then I found a hidden treasure. Of course, it was a sword and I couldn't use swords as per agreement, so I had to pass up on it. I went jumping through the bogs, and when I crossed the river, a band of bandits were waiting for me on the other side. I had to kick their butts, of course. How kind of them to leave this fire burning for me though. I decided to rest for an hour. It'd been a long journey, and looking at the map I realized I was halfway to Novigrad, a bit over 1,000 steps. Also, I could take a shortcut straight through the forest to save some time. Although it might prove a dangerous endeavor, still I had to try, so I went ahead. The forest got pretty spooky, and suddenly there was a cave with a bunch of weird neckers. This little one was just running into a tree. I thought it was weird. They were also wearing some weird Leshen masks and were hard to punch through. My Witcher senses were telling me there were a lot of them in the cave ahead, and also there was something big moving. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to sneak in to investigate. Of course, it was just a rock troll. You can say I was trolled because at that moment I realized I was quite underpowered by so many of them, so I had to make it out alive. Luckily, with some rolling, I managed to get out intact. I left them to their business and went ahead into the forest. Then in the thick of it, I ran into damn insects. They tried to poison me, but I kicked their stinky butts. Then a big one came out of nowhere and I had to fight it too. It was a close one. I had to use some healing potions not to fall victim to a bug. After kicking its butt, I went out of that treacherous forest swearing I would never go back there again. A horrible place. It was already getting late, but at long last Novigrad appeared in my view. I was on the right path. The path to victory, and as I approached it, I got attacked by another band of bandits, but they were on horseback, and let me tell you, they teach you everything in a Witcher school but how to fight bandits on horseback with your fists. This was my very first experience and it was a close call, but eventually I figured out how to knock them off their high horses and kick their butts, of course. There was an abandoned tower, so I decided to take a break and get some warmth inside of it. I climbed it up and look. A spooky, scary skeleton. So yeah, even though Novigrad was inside and I could have probably made it by nightfall, I decided there was no rush and I was really sleepy too. So I meditated till the break of dawn. The weather was stormy, but at least I was rejuvenated to enter the city. As I approached it, I said hello to some guards and some villagers, and then I beheld a rather gruesome sight. Someone, presumably a witch, was burning on a pyre. A welcoming sight indeed. At long last I entered Novigrad. The city was bustling. I am not fond of loud places, but that atmosphere gave me a sense of hope and a sense of fulfillment as I was getting closer to the end of my mission, or so I thought. As I went through the streets of Novigrad to the city center, I got to see the infamous witch hunters and their procedure of burning witches on pyres, and listened to their regular rhetoric. And then on the wall, I saw this poster. My good friend Triss was wanted for witchcraft. I got a bit worried about her, but I was sure she was alright. Then I witnessed something pleasant, which was a band of bards playing in the street.
On your way? Or will you stay longer?
I thought buskers definitely made Novigrad a cordial place. After listening to their beautiful music, I gave them a bit of something and went ahead. As I was nearing the agreed place, a storm blew up. Something about severe thunderstorms which makes them beautiful.
A storm, damn it.
So I stopped to admire the view a little bit. Gorgeous, I thought. Then finally I went across the bridge to the agreed part of the meetup. There I witnessed the eternal fire gathering, the Order of the Flaming Rose. That's when I remembered my good old friend from way back, Siegfried, and I was wondering whatever had happened of him. Then I asked this lady if she had seen Gaunter O'Dimm, describing him as the devil, and she said,
Yes, master?
so I went looking for him, checking every face that was there. Then I went inside the Temple of the Eternal Fire, but to my disappointment, Gaunter O'Dimm was nowhere to be found. After waiting for a few more minutes, I decided to try my Witcher senses, and suddenly on the wall I saw a writing which said, "Congratulations, Geralt, you've survived thus far, but this is not the end of your journey. To prove you are really worthy, you must come to this place I marked on your map. There your journey will end after passing your greatest challenge yet. Good luck, Geralt." I cursed the old devil, but what choice did I have? I had agreed to his bidding after all, and well, you can't play games with the devil, so no Quen could fulfill the deal, unfortunately. Utterly disappointed, I decided I might as well wait out the storm there and meditated for a couple of days. The rain finally stopped, and as I walked out of the temple, I found a place of power. tower, an igni one. At least something, I thought. Even though it stopped raining, the sky was still dark and I needed a better mood to travel further. So I meditated for another day until the sky was clear. Now I just had to figure out how to get to the other side without having to go back through the streets of Novigrad. I simply wanted a shortcut. But looking back, I didn't know if I could make the jump. My Witcher senses were telling me that it was not doable. If I jumped, this is what would have happened. So I started to look for a way down. I didn't want to go back, but the cliff around was too rough all the way. I just needed to get to that village in the distance. If only I could get to that patch of land. At that point, I didn't even mind getting wet. Of course, jumping from this height into water is the same as jumping onto concrete for a regular human. But my mutations gave me enough endurance to make it happen. So I thought of jumping on that boulder first, but no, I wouldn't make it. Suddenly, I found a skeleton with a bag, and inside it was a saddle for Roach. I realized I missed Roach even more then. I had to find a way down. Then I looked around again and I saw a little ledge sticking out. So I thought if I jumped carefully onto it, I might just make it into the water. And so I did. Then I jumped again and by sheer luck I landed in the water. It was a very dangerous jump. Don't try this at home. Now I just had to swim to land. There I saw a group of drowners waiting for me. I had to warm up a bit, hadn't used my fist in a while. So after reaching land and giving the drowners a warm greeting, I kicked their butts. I felt so good making that jump earlier, and looking back to where I was standing a few minutes ago, it just felt so good that I hadn't had to go all the way around the city. I was glad I'd taken the risk. Now it was just a walk in the park to my destination, or so I thought. But before continuing my journey, I figured I should rest a bit. So I meditated for an hour and had a little lunch break. Then I went ahead, and as I was going up the hill, just when I thought there would be no trouble up ahead, I heard the roaring sounds of something huge in the sky. At first I thought it was a griffin, but after getting a closer look, I realized I was dealing with a cockatrice, a formidable beast. I had never tried my fist against a bird that size. First time for everything, I thought. After giving it a few slaps, I realized that my fists were no match for its wind reach and mobility, and I was running low on fumes, so I had to run away whispering, "An elephant never forgets." Bird. I was beaten down, so I needed to find a place to recharge my batteries. I went through the sunflower fields to the all too familiar village of Yanta, the place where it all started. The village felt like home, but looking at the map I decided not to stop there and get to the next resting place instead. So I dashed straight forward, down the road to this abandoned place. I couldn't open the door and I couldn't use art to break it since using art was against the rules. The place looked abandoned, but I heard some noises coming from under it. So I decided to investigate. I found a basement and went down, and there was a dwarf painting and hammering something. I asked him what he was doing down there, to which he said,
May your beard grow robust and free.
So I figured he wouldn't mind if I took his alcohol. I needed it to refill my potions. There was another dwarf there. He gestured me to go up to their house so I could have a rest. Such a cordial welcome. Velen is a hospitable place after all, I thought. So I went up the ladder and rested by the fireplace, like good old times. After the rest I had to continue my journey. So I bade my goodbyes to the friendly dwarves and went out into the woods. As I went through the bushes I came upon this tower, and then I smelled something burning. A band of fallen soldiers was guarding this place. The Order of the Flaming Rose, I figured. They were not friendly at all. After trying to hand slap a couple of them, I realized I was underpowered. After all, my fists were no match for their well-made armor, weapons, shields, and bows and arrows. So yeah, I decided not to risk that encounter. As I ran further into the woods, I heard rustling in the underbrush by the spring. I decided to investigate, and then a bear attacked me out of nowhere. This one was lively and by the looks of it powerful and hungry. I got tossed around and slapped by it real hard. A normal human would have died there and then at its first blow. Luckily my mutations made me more durable, so I took the bear one-on-one and kicked its butt. That was the best fight I'd ever had, the fight that deserved a heavy drink to drink to, and so I did. I just felt like Revenant after defeating the beast, a rejuvenated being. Nothing could stop me then, or so I thought. So I followed the spring to the marked place. It was just a few steps away then. Then I reached the abandoned Garen estate. The marker was right there, and yet I couldn't find O'Dimm anywhere. I checked my Witcher senses for writings or hidden notes. Nothing. So I decided to meditate and wait for a few hours. Perhaps O'Dimm would appear then. After meditating for a day, I opened my eyes and there was no one there. No sign of O'Dimm whatsoever. So I thought I should look around the estate. I went east. The fields around looked abandoned. I could hear some wolves howling in the distance, but then my Witcher senses sensed some other activity nearby, so I went to investigate. There I came across a small cabin and it smelled like guarded treasure, but also it smelled of nasty, stinky little boars. Yes, the treasure was guarded by a sounder of evil boars. Fist fighting one bear is one thing, fist fighting 4 wild boars is nearly impossible, I gotta tell you. But I knew this was my last task, the most challenging battle O'Dimm had mentioned earlier, so I had to do it. It took all of me, literally, physically and mentally. I was boxing them the whole day through, had to use all of my potions, even got poisoned by them. The boars got me good, but at long last I landed the final blow. I kicked their butts. It was the worst experience ever. It confirmed all the suspicions I'd ever had. Boars are evil. Boars are the most powerful, devilish creatures ever created. I felt so humiliated and I could hear O'Dimm's laughter from the shadows, but it was over. So I opened the door to the house and there was a chest with some treasure and a note from O'Dimm himself saying, "Congratulations, Geralt. You have fulfilled our deal. You have survived the country of Velen without using your weapons. You are a true Witcher indeed. Any wish you want could be yours. Just say it." At that point I just wanted to rest, but I needed to get back to the castle, so without thinking hard I mumbled out, "I wish I could just fast travel from signpost to signpost." Then I heard a whisper from the shadows, "Done." I was confused. I went out of the cabin, tired and beaten down. There was blood on my hands and I didn't know if it was mine or the damn boars. But the journey was far from over. I knew it. There was one more thing I had to do. I just had to. But first I needed my sword. And what exactly did O'Dimm mean by the wish? Perhaps I was going crazy, but I decided to give it a try. I went up to the nearest signpost and I felt this strange power emitting. It was sorta like a portal opened up and I knew that feeling, for I hated it with all my blood. But it was either that or walking. So yeah, I channeled the energy and I could see all the other signposts I could teleport to on the map. I opened my eyes and I was on the shore of the road to Bald Mountain, just where I started my journey. I was baffled by it, but it worked, so I shouldn't complain, I thought. I looked around, but Roach was nowhere to be seen, and my swords, they were not there. Stolen, I thought. So I went up to the signpost again and channeling the power I teleported to the castle. After resting a little bit, I grabbed one of my swords. Luckily I had another silver sword stocked in the chest. It should be enough, I thought. And so I went out on my final mission. First I went and repaired my armor.
Oi, Geralt! How's the armor performing?
Fergus cursed at the condition of it. I told him to blame the boars. Seeing the horses around, I figured Roach could be somewhere around too, so I whistled and she appeared out of nowhere. The only problem was getting her off the roof. Maybe Roach can teleport too, I thought. Now, I didn't want to use fast travel anymore, didn't want to get a headache before the final battle, so I saddled up Roach and went out into the wild again.
Run, Roach.
Now, if you're wondering what this final battle is, you will see in a moment. We got to where we needed to be, and no, it had nothing to do with cows. You will see soon. So we went up the hill, and yes, as I said before, an elephant never forgets. I just had to kick its butt. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this little Witcher's tale, and as always, thanks for watching. Stay tuned, stay strong, see you on the next one.